gonna be. No matter what comes our way, we'll be together, together.
Welcome to Homeschooling Down South. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Kat. We're two Southern homeschooling mamas sharing real talk, resources, and inspiration for life and learning in the Southeast.
Each week, we'll chat with inspiring voices in the homeschool community, highlight must-see nature spots and field trip gems, and share resources from across the region.
Whether you're new to homeschooling or a seasoned pro, pull up a chair and join us as we celebrate the joy, freedom, and community of homeschooling down south.
We'll laugh together, we'll learn together, find the joys in life together, give each other grace and space to be.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Today, we are so excited because we have Amber O'Neal Johnston with us. Hello, Amber. How are you?
Hey, so happy to be here.
Welcome to the podcast.
We are so jazzed. We met Amber at the Southeast Homeschool Expo. I had the privilege of sitting in on her session about the art of homemaking, and it was so beautiful. Kat warned me ahead of time. Anytime you listen to her, she will make you cry. So be prepared. And I definitely did get a little misty-eyed. So we're just so excited to chat with you about all things homeschool and all the incredible things you're doing for the homeschool community.
Thank you. I'm really happy that you were able to sit in on that session. It's one of my favorites. And so, I love that we kind of bonded over that.
It's the good tears, too. It's the tears that make you feel like, oh, I'm in the right place at the right time. And these words are things I needed to hear. I've been so lucky, Amber, to hear you speak several times at Wild and Free conferences, at the Charlotte Mason Institute conference. And I just was so excited when I saw that you were presenting at Southeast Homeschool Expo because I knew we were going to get to actually meet. And I got to attend your session on teaching hard history. And that was great. I really appreciate the challenge and the opportunity that you placed before us. So there's just so many good things that we're going to get into in this conversation. But the place we really need to start is, Amber, how did you get into homeschooling? How did you find yourself on this path?
Well, it's funny because I am the daughter of two public school principals, and I never imagined ever being a homeschooler. It's not like I thought about it and then rejected the idea. It never even entered my mind. My husband, who's also the product of public education, we had decided that we were going to put our kids in private Christian school. So I would be a stay-at-home mom, and then when the oldest got old enough for school, I would go to work full time, and like his salary would cover the household bills and mine would cover this private tuition. And then when it came time for her to kind of enter K4 or pre-K, he comes up with this cockamamie idea that we're going to homeschool. And I was like, homie, what? I was like, I cannot see it, right? And because he kept saying we, and I was like, why do you keep saying we? Because you're going to be at work. So what you mean is me. And he was like, yeah, blah, blah. I thought, oh, he's kidding. He's a jokester. He's joking around. And then one night we were at dinner together. We had a sitter and he like reaches across the table and he's like, I need to talk to you about something. I was like, what have you done? And because he got really serious and he was like, every time I ask you about homeschooling, you start laughing. And I was like, because it's funny. And I said, but you've been laughing too. And he said, yeah, but mine's nervous laughter because I am like reacting to your laughter. He was like, but I'm actually really serious. So we went back and forth from there, several conversations of me saying no. And finally, in his wisdom that I really feel was from the Lord, he said, would you try it just for 1 year? Like give it all you've got with a really strong dose of seriousness. And if it's not for you or it's not for our family, I'll never ask you about it again. I was like, it's K4 sold. You know what I mean? Like I'll do this to get this guy off my back. And oh my gosh, it was the most glorious year. And I was already a stay-at-home mom, so it's not like our lives like revolutionized, but it was just beautiful. The intention and the people I met and the moms who came alongside me. And now I recognize so much like the seriousness with which they dealt with me because I have to admit there are times when someone's like asking me homeschooling questions. They're like, my oldest is 4. I'm like, girl, go play in the creek. Like I can't even take this conversation seriously. But they did take me seriously. And so I remember that. And now when I'm dealing with moms who have very young children, I treat them with the utmost respect and seriousness and about their intention to homeschool because that's how I was treated. And it made all the difference in the world.
That's so
Wow.
beautiful. So How many years into your homeschool journey are you at this point?
So my oldest is a junior in high school.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's a long time, right?
Yeah. That's
Mhm.
amazing. And you have 4, correct?
Yes, I have 4 children.
Okay.
They are junior and a freshman, ninth and 11th grade. They're girls, and the boys are in 4th and 7th grade. And again, they've all been homeschooled from the
That's
beginning.
that's amazing. That's amazing.
So tell us a little bit about your homeschool rhythm, your philosophy, your approach.
Mhm.
What does homeschooling look like in your home?
Well, I can summarize it very clearly for everyone. I started my kind of platform with the tagline that in my home, Charlotte Mason wears an afro. So
I love it.
that gets the picture through really clearly for a lot of people. So we are living books and beautiful literature and tons of time in nature and poetry and music and art and handicrafts and science and a rich, rich, rich dose of history filled with really intriguing nonfiction books along with historical fiction and biographies. And with that at the core of what we're doing, there is a really heavy concentration of African American culture in that, and that's kind of like the point from which we pivot from. So we include a lot of other voices as well, and a lot of classics and traditional works that people would be more familiar with, but we start at the core with our own culture.
Did you know when you started or since the first year was like K4, at what point did you realize, "Hey, this is what we're doing. This is this Charlotte Mason journey. This is how we're gonna homeschool. This is what the vibe is for our family."
Yeah, so from the very beginning, when I was like doing my very first run of research, I realized immediately that I was drawn to like literature. And I had never even heard of that. But this idea that you could like educate really based on rich literature, I was like, sign me up because I love to read. I love story. I know that people are attracted to story. And my kids already loved listening to me read to them, and they would tell me stories. So I was like, yeah, I'm sold on that. The Charlotte Mason part in particular came through one night while I was taking a quiz online, like really scientifically, about what's your homeschool style, because I had to figure all this out. And the way the quiz answers were like, it would tell you like if this is your probable style, and here's a good book to read to learn more about it. And so mine said that I would like Charlotte Mason, and the book to read was For the Children's Sake by Susan Macaulay. And I was like, okay, I'll definitely read that. And I ordered a copy. I was nursing a baby at the time. That's like my most intellectual time of life because I have so much time to read, and I wasn't on social media or anything. It's pretty amazing. I was just reading books like crazy. And so I read that book really quickly. And during the book, I started crying. I was just at home alone in the room with the baby late at night. It was dark. I had this little light on my book. And, I found myself in tears thinking, like, wow, somebody put into words what's already in this mama's heart. And they basically laid out an educational vision for me that was rooted in the whole reason that I had been a stay-at-home mom. And I didn't know that I thought that like when it was school time, I had to let them go. I didn't realize that I could like remain attached in this way and grow, and we could learn and continue to live together. And so yeah, I just kind of dove into figuring out what this is all about, and from that perspective, I never looked back. Now, along the way, my daughter got a little bit older, and she started asking some really important questions. And one of the most important ones was, why do we never study anybody that looks like us? And I had to contend with that. And before I could answer her, I had to answer that question for myself because I wasn't really sure. I was just sharing with her what I knew, and that's all I knew. And that's all I saw online and in the different curriculum lesson plans and things like that. So once I was able to do some soul searching and prayer to figure out the answer for myself, I let her know why things had been like that in our home and that I was committed to changing that. And that's where Heritage Mom was born, which is kind of my brand in which I talk about that among many other things.
Love that.
You know what's cool is that, I mean, I think so many people think about Charlotte Mason and they think, well, that's outdated. It leaves out so much. But a lot of what Charlotte Mason's philosophy was about was coming alongside the child. And what you just described is coming alongside, as she said, why? And you said, let's find out. And that's exactly what Charlotte Mason would encourage a mother to do, is come alongside and learn alongside their child. And you've
Yeah.
sort of turned this idea that Charlotte Mason isn't for everyone, like, on its head.
Yeah, it's been actually kind of fun for me because in the beginning, people were giving me so much side eye, like, "She's not really doing Charlotte Mason," like, whatever. And I just kept going forward. I'm like, "Say I'm not. These are living books. Say I'm not. This is beautiful poetry. We're listening to beautiful music and learning about composers and art. Like, show me where I'm not." And then slowly but surely, people were like, can you share that lesson plan with me?" Like, "What are you guys reading over there?" And I was like, "The Charlotte Mason police are being overcome." And so it just like it's been joyful. And I think
Mm,
that's what's attracted people the most. It's not like there's nothing sad or contentious or, agenda or whatever. It's just the joy of swimming in mirrors and windows that I talk about a lot. There's nothing wrong with children learning about themselves. We could look at it, yes, we're African American, but we're also American. And who would
mhm.
argue that American children shouldn't learn the stories of America? And it's the same way for African American children, but also we should all be learning other people's stories too, not only to be learned and to be educated, but more importantly, to bond us with humanity, with the rest of humanity, and to be the hands and feet of Christ. How can you do that when you're not even in relationship with other people? And also
Right.
because it's fun. And I keep
Right.
coming back to that. And I'm like, I mean, try to show these stories with your kids. They'll be asking for more and more. And that is what, to me, was the most beautiful thing. The thing that is right is also the thing the kids are attracted to.
So you brought up something that I think is really pivotal to understand how you talk about this. And just for any of our listeners who this concept of mirrors and doors is new to, can you expand on that for us?
So there was a professor at Ohio State. She's long retired now, Radine Sims Bishop. And I was looking and trying to figure out when my daughter asked me that question, what the heck is going on? Why is our family like this? But why are so many families like this? And I found this paper that she'd written on literature as mirrors and windows. And she talks about mirrors being books that children can see themselves in. And yes, in my family, in that instance, it was ethnicity that I was talking about and that we were really missing. But I've since come to see how broad this idea of mirrors can be. It could be someone in your same socioeconomics, it could be someone whose grandmother is helping to raise them, it could be someone who lives in the country or in an apartment in the city or in another country or in Indiana, and we all have experienced this as homeschoolers when our children have ever encountered a story where they mention that the child in the story is homeschooled. Our kids immediately jump up and start jumping up and down. They're like, "Mom, mom, mom." That is the power of a mirror.
Mm,
Why is that kid so excited? Because homeschool children rarely get to see their stories normalized in literature or movies. And when they do, they lose their minds. And that's
yeah.
the same thing and the same reaction that my children were having to Black stories or characters when I was introducing them to them. So then she talks about the need that's just as strong for literary windows, where our kids can look through the window and learn about how someone who is different than them in some way. Obviously, again, ethnicity is the most obvious way we can think of this, but that's the tip of the iceberg. It could be an immigrant story. It could be a story that crosses age and a story that tells about someone who speaks differently or speaks a different language or someone who looks different or has some type of special need that our kids are not familiar with that they can become familiar with through the story. And then finally, we take it further, one step further to this idea of sliding glass doors. And that's a window that's so poignant that not only do our kids feel like they're looking at the story, they actually see themselves interacting with those characters and they can see how they're going to do things differently in their lives as a result of this book. And when I started thinking of our bookshelf in these terms, mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors, I realized that all we had were windows and there
Mm,
was nothing
wow.
else. And I thought to myself, how can I explain this to my kids and how can I explain this to other people? And something that was really important to me, our windows were really good. I mean, we were reading good literature. You know what I mean? This was not a situation where all our books were trash and needed to be burned, right? Like this was like top notch, good windows. So it wasn't that the books I was sharing with my children were bad, it's that the bookshelf was incomplete. And that's what I set out to do, was to try to complete that for my kids.
It's
Had
incredible.
had you at what point I'm always just so amazed by people who are able to write so eloquently. At what point, you said when your daughter said this, that's how Heritage Mom was born. I mean, did you just wake up one morning and say, "You know what? I think I'm gonna start writing books." Like, how did that come about? And I mean, what was that like taking that first step? Because your books are so lovely. Your curriculum is so lovely. So how did you conceptualize all of that?
Well, I started blogging because I felt like I was onto this thing and I felt so free. I felt so free and my kids were so happy and so was I, that I felt like it wasn't even right to keep this to myself. Like, I have to tell you this story, people, because what about you? What if your family changed their last name when you came to Ellis Island and you want to dig into like where you came from, no matter where that might be? Or what if you are raising a bonus child and you're remarried and that's not your child biologically, but you're here to share your story with that child and to tell that child their story and all these different things. Like, we aren't talking about any of that. So I wanted to share the story. I started blogging. And I did that for a long time. I'm an old lady, so I still blog. I know people are like, "Oh, you need to be on Substack," and I'm like, "Ain't nobody got time to learn new stuff. If you wanna read it, you can go to my website." So I was blogging, and I think the book was kind of born, somewhat out of that, but also my desire. It's really hard to write a lot about things that can be controversial because other people can make them controversial in social media. Because people can say all kinds of crazy stuff to you, but if you are a believer and you follow Christ, we can't really clap back the
Yeah.
way that we can't send back that same vibe that we're receiving. So I felt very muted a lot of times, like misunderstood, but that I couldn't get nasty the way that nastiness was thrown at me. And so the book to me was an opportunity to become unmuted and to lay out the entire story in a way that I felt like I could be heard and understood without interruption. And so that's kind of the idea behind the first book, and the other ones flowed from that idea. And the curriculum, quite simply, those are my lesson plans for my children. So I don't consider myself a curriculum writer. I just try to be generous with the work and hours that I put in. If I'm going to sit there and plan the whole thing out for my own kids, I might as well share it. And that's what those are.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the books. So the first book, A Place to Belong, is absolutely beautiful. And so it came out of the blog,
Mhm.
and tell us about how that process.
So, A Place to Belong, I'm writing that book in the aftermath of COVID and George Floyd and a lot of emotions in the
Oh.
nation, in my home, in my own heart. And I was looking for a book, actually. I wasn't looking to write a book, I was looking to read a book. And what I was looking for was a book that would give me some thoughts on how do I raise children who feel like they are exquisitely made and
Oh.
just phenomenal children with a beautiful story that they can definitely feel proud of, that they know that God made them just like they are, knew every hair on their heads. How can I raise children like that? And at the same time, make sure that they understand that everyone else's story is just as important to God and should be taken that way by us as well. And I could find a book that gave me either side. Love yourself, love your kids are the best, they're the bomb, everyone else sucks pretty much or doesn't matter. Or a book that's like, just die to everything that you know about yourself and just be self-deprecating at all times and only care about what other people are doing. And I thought, well, the Bible says to love your neighbor as yourself. I want both. Call me greedy. My kids, how can I say love your neighbor as yourself if you don't love yourself?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then if you only love yourself, then you're not loving your neighbor. And so I couldn't find the book and I was like, "Oh, okay, fine." And so of course that's like the dreamy part of the story, but then of course getting an agent and getting book contract and pitching this idea and trying to explain it. So it's part manifesto, part memoir, and part guide, right? With very, specific ideas, a lot of ideas that other people can use in their own homes, and also how to write a book that's not for Black women or white women
Mm.
or Latino or Asian women, but could speak to every mom to the same degree, and that was not easy.
Bet. And it should be stated too that this is not like a homeschool book. This is a book that anybody, any mom could pick up and benefit from and find beauty in this journey that you take the reader on. So we'll get to some more homeschool specific books, but this book, I mean, it's for anyone, and it's truly beautiful.
And I love what you said about you wanted to read this book, but you couldn't find it. So you just made it, because Kat's thing is always, if there is a program that you want or a curriculum or something that you want and you can't find it in your area, maybe you just create it yourself. And I just love that you were like, you know what? I can't find this thing. I'm probably not the only one that wants it, so I'm just going to do it.
Yeah, that's basically where it came. If I had found the right book, I wouldn't have written that.
And it sounds overly simplified, right? Like, oh, there wasn't the group I needed or the book I wanted to read, and so I just made it, like, as if that then
Right.
just the next day it was there. There's all of this work and energy that goes into it. But I do think when we see what's missing because we are searching for it, then that's when we kind of create from the most authentic place.
Absolutely. I
That
agree.
sounds awesome. Okay, so the second book, Soul School. Tell us about Soul School.
So, Soul School, it is subtitled Taking Kids on a Joy-Filled Journey Through Black American Culture. And maybe if there was space on the cover, I would have added one book at a time. So, it is a book of books. It's kind of my contribution to join the shelf with Honey for a Child's Heart and Read Aloud Family and books like that I have loved and
Mm-hmm.
adored over the years, dog-eared, written up, highlighted, ripped pages, copies. But I have to say that I always, as I went through these books, I always thought to myself, like, wow, all of these books and not even one handful of books that have Black people in them. And at first, I want to admit that I was mad. I was like, what the heck, man? This is messed up. But then I thought, well, these are women who are moms who are sharing the books they read with their children. Why am I getting upset? Well, why don't I just do the ones I read with my children and call it a collection, right? Just put this on the shelf with these books and you'll have a more complete look at it. And so I started, instead of seeing it as like something to be upset about, I saw it as like an opportunity for me to add my work to that, type of lineage. And so the first part of the book talks to parents and educators about what to look for in children's literature that highlights Black culture in an authentic and beautiful way. So it just goes through all parts of it. Like, I'm looking for this, you're looking for this, and here's why. Here's the history of our music. So look for things like this. And then most of the book is this like really rich, deeply annotated and curated book list of hundreds of books written by Black authors featuring Black characters. And I give a summary of about a third of the books, and I talk about why I chose that book, why it's important for children to learn about in this book, and discussion questions and project ideas. And my favorite part is called Second Helpings. And it's kind of like if you have a really good soul food dinner, you kind of get a little bit of everything first, but then you go back for second helpings on the best parts. And
Mm-hmm.
so Second Helping says if your kid loves this book, then I think they'll love these other two as well for whatever reason. So, it was a labor of love. I read every
Oh my
single
goodness.
book in there, and there are 360 books I believe we ended up with. And imagine how many I had to read to end up with 360 to
Mm-hmm.
include. And it was me saying that this literature matters as well and can be beautiful and worthy of people's time, attention, and study. I think it's a true treasure, deeply emotional treasure to families raising Black children, but it's a gift to all other families as well.
Right, because it's those windows and sliding glass doors for the other
Absolutely.
families, and then it's the
Absolutely.
mirrors for Black families, and it's just so generous because you did so much work to find these opportunities to read from other voices that were left out of what's considered a classical, rich literature education. And I love that you talked earlier about the bookshelf was beautiful, but it was incomplete. And then Soul School is completing the other bookshelf, the bookshelf of all the book resources, all those great books that you mentioned that so many homeschool families love. this completes the bookshelf. And
Yeah.
probably there's more, right? There's probably more books to complete that bookshelf
Yeah, I
that you're
hope that more are coming, and I think that if each of us, can take what we're doing in our own homes and our level of expertise, I would love to see a Latina mom, with a book to add to that shelf. I'd love
Yes.
to see, various Asian moms bringing their expertise because I mean, I don't know, you tell me. And so when I think of that with humility, I understand perhaps why some of those other books weren't filled with Black stories. They may be feeling the same way, like, I don't know. And so I think that it was something that I wanted to, one, for my own children, just to memorialize their childhood in literature, but also to help other families to say, like, well, I think it is a gift to be able to say a Black Christian mom vetted these and gave her stamp of approval. And I think there's value in that. Online, you can Google book lists. And someone asked me about that once. They're like, well, can't you just Google book lists? And I'm like, they're so annoying though. They'll have all those lists, and I'm just like, but why? If they don't tell you why you should read them,
Mm.
I highly doubt a lot of times that people even read all of those books. It's just like a very generic summary. And instead, I'm like going through explaining exactly why this book matters and bringing you into the decision making rather than just telling you, here, read this. And then also, as the books it goes from preschool all the way, there's a chapter from preschool all the way, different chapters all the way through high school. And so, like in the high school chapters, the books, have you tried reading IA literature, young adult literature lately? So there are a couple times where I'm like, I say all of the books in here are okay for my family, but I do want to bring your attention to the fact that this book has some profanity or this book has a case of abuse, so that I always fall in the philosophy like I can read anything with my family, most likely, but I don't like surprises. Do not
Right.
surprise me.
No.
Do not recommend a book to me. And then right in the middle of the book is like, surprise. I don't like that. So I think that was another value that I could bring to say not that none of these books have hard things in them or even things we wish weren't there, but that I can let you know so you can make the decision that's best for your children.
How long did it take you to I mean, what was I can't imagine how long it
Yeah.
I mean, I listen to audiobooks because I struggle to find time to sit down and read. So, I mean, really, truly a labor of love. I mean, how long would you estimate it took?
I had 6 months to write it. So a lot of this thankfully comes from this is actually my real life. Like I
Okay.
had already read
Okay.
so many of these books and our shelves are filled with that. But I took up residence at our dining room table and each day that I wrote, I would take photos of the table because my kids, I can't even finish that sentence, my kids. And I'd be like, "Don't touch the piles." And, like, they're trying to clean up. I'm like, "Oh, the one time you wanna clean up without asking and you moved my piles around," and I had them categorized, so I would take photos of the dining room table each time I got done writing. But, yeah, it was an all-encompassing, I would say year from the time that the contract was, pitched or the time that the book idea was pitched to the time it was accepted and the 6 months I had to write it. And all along, keep in mind, new books are being released, right? So finally, I kept sending emails like, "Wait, but there's one more. But wait, there's one more." They're finally like, "Ma'am, you're done. This is it. We're done." I'm like,
We
"Okay."
are cutting you off.
So, yeah, yeah. That was hard because I was committed to only including books that are in print because I didn't want
Mm.
people sometimes I talk about books on my blog and people will be like, "I found it. It was $172, but I found it." I'm like, "Girl, I did not intend for you to do that. It was $2.52 when I got it." So I didn't want people to feel, even somewhat compelled to spend a ton of money on books, but yeah.
What I hear you saying is that maybe there's a second edition sometime in the future with all these new.
I gotta find some kind of way because I can't even tell you. I'm sick every time I see a book that didn't get included. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then I have nightmares that I'm gonna run into the author somewhere and they're gonna be like, really? Really? My book didn't rise to the top for that. And I'm
Oh,
like, I'm
No.
sorry. I'm so sorry.
it would have. I just had a
Right.
deadline. Well, and now the third book is out, just
Mhm.
released in
Mhm.
August of 2025, and homegrown. I am reading it right now. I am savoring it because every chapter feels like a conversation with a friend and it's beautiful. So tell us a little bit about how you came to the idea for Homegrown.
Okay, first, I think it's funny. You mentioned it earlier. You're like, A Place to Belong. My first book is not a homeschooling book, but it always gets put in the homeschooling category because I'm a homeschooler. Then Soul School. It's not a homeschooling book, but it always gets put in the homeschooling category. Then finally, I'm like, Homegrown. Actually, guys, it's a homeschooling book. And so my third book is a just bathed in homeschooling and home education. And what it is an anthology. So I wrote one of the essays and I edited the book. It's, a project that I curated and handpicked the other writers. So there are 29 other homeschoolers, mostly moms, but also a couple of dads. And they are covering all walks of life. And that was really important to me. This is kind of the stamp or the overlay that I bring to all of my work. And that is wanting to hear a lot of voices, wanting something that everyone could relate to and learn from, the mirrors and the windows within one single book for us as parents. And so there are grandmothers who are done with their homeschooling journey and are looking back and telling us what they wish they had known or what they think that would be valuable to us. There are moms who had just had a newborn when writing her essay. There are white parents and black parents and biracial and multiracial and Latino and Asian and American and British. And there's a family, a Canadian mom with an African American dad living in Thailand raising kids. I mean, I went crazy
Wow.
with it, right? Yeah, I mean, how much more unique can it get? But I was looking for I just wanted everyone to see that homeschooling could be for you. But the funny thing is, that's not what most of the essays are about. It's not about their differences or like what makes them different. What you'll see is this like there's some common themes, relationship, how important relationships are, relationships between us and our children, with our neighbors, with our communities, with other family members. And we hear stories about the beauty of homeschooling. I mean, that will make you cry from just like the description and how much you can relate to that. But then we also hear the valleys of life that occur while homeschooling. It's not a utopia. Bad things still happen in our lives even while we're homeschooling, and some of the moms were very vulnerable and shared some of their darkest moments and how homeschooling helped them or how they were able to continue or how they weren't and in what that means to them today. So I think that I was trying to how can I say this? Originally, when I didn't want to homeschool, I met this lady at the park and she invited me to her house. And I told her that my husband wanted me to homeschool and I thought it was crazy. And she was like, just come by. And I did one day. And when I left her house, I was just like overflowing with confidence and joy and hopefulness because she gave me a vision, not just of her life, but she gave me a vision of what mine could be. While I was sitting in her home that day, we had hot tea. She made me cookies, and I teased her later. She never made me cookies again. It was all a trap. It was a trap. I was like, "You gave me Oreos today. The first time I came, the whole house had an aroma." I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm gonna be like her." And now we just eat Oreos. But I was thinking everyone doesn't have a Judy, and what would
Mm.
it be like if I could bring that to the table, a table full of voices that will give us hope and inspire us and encourage us. So that's what that is.
That's so beautiful. We just went from this moment of laughing, and then I was like, "Oh, she got me. She needs a book full of Judies." I love that so
Yeah.
much.
Mhm. That was
That's
great.
incredible. It's a beautiful book, and it every time I start a new or end a chapter, I think, "Oh gosh, that one was the one that I really needed to read." And then I read another one, and there's something in that I really needed. It's incredible.
And even that, like what you're saying to me was all intentional with the homeschool moms because we don't have a lot of time. And I love that you can jump into the book anywhere. Like whatever it is you can look at the topics and say, what do you need today? Or you can go cover to cover if that's your thing. But they're essays. So when you're done, if you need to put this book down for a week, a month, a year, whatever you need, and come back to it, there's no feeling like, "Oh, I gotta start back over now," or "What was happening then?" or whatever. So it's really conducive to our lifestyle. You can guzzle it down or you can savor it over time, and I think either way, it will meet you where you are.
At any season,
Oh, for
because you
sure.
could, we're homeschooling elementary aged children right now, so we can read it right now and we'll get what we need right now from it. But I guarantee when we're in the middle school or the high school years, we read it again and we're gonna get a whole new thing from it, you know? I love that.
Yeah, for sure. And I made sure like we have essays about middle school and about high schooling, and, and parents who are in those stages and before that and in the end, like in the very beginning and in the end, for that very reason. I knew I wanted this to have longevity and to be relevant to people over the long
So
haul.
cool.
So what about the curriculum? Talk to us about how you got to the point where you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna put these because 'cause you've got the 2 hymn studies
Hmm.
and you've got the sweet tea and cookie one that is just
Yeah.
I love that one so much."
That's my favorite one. Yeah, so again, when I have not always been able I've rarely been able to find exactly what I needed for my family based on our philosophy in our home. And so I've created a lot of things from scratch, staying up late at night, researching, trial and error. And I would just like scratch these out in my little planner, old school with a pencil. And then people would ask me about it, like my friends locally first, but then people when I was blogging and I would mention something and they'd be like, "Oh, can I see the plans for that?" And I'm like, "You want me to like take a picture of my planner, like my pencil scratch?" Or I didn't really know like how do I do that? They're just my notes. And a friend of mine suggested, she was like, "Just type your notes up in Word." And I was like, "Nobody wants to see that." And she was like, "I'll make it beautiful." And that's what happened. So I
Wow.
gave her the Word document and she put it in a beautiful format, but the truth is the core, information, which books we read and which videos we watched that day or what music we were listening to, that was just written down by hand in my planner along the way. So Sweet Tea and Cookies is my favorite one, and it is a family celebration of the American South. I love it for a lot of reasons. One, because I feel like I was the perfect person to do that. Because some people, if you make a celebration of the American South, people are going to be giving you side eye, like, like, "Oh, I don't know what she's about to do about this." But when I presented, everybody's like curious. They're like, okay. And I'm like, because it's a true celebration, right? It's not a anything that is anything more than saying that we acknowledge that hard things happened in the deep South. And I focus on the states where chattel slavery was the worst. And the reason I did that is because my kids, they're like, "I hate being from Georgia." And I was like, "Why do you say that?" They're like, "Because everything bad happened here." Because we're reading all these history books and it's like, "Oh, we're going to sell these enslaved people down south and there are lynchings and all this blood was shed." And they were like, "This is not a good place to be from." And my joke is I tell the kids, "I'm not from here, you're from here." But in all seriousness, I'm like, never be ashamed of home.
Mm.
Never. There's
Ugh.
no place in the world that I think that a child should be ashamed of, no matter where they're from. And so I said, "That's my fault for only telling partial stories. I've been so focused on telling this good history that I forgot to balance it." And the truth is that your home and the surrounding states, a lot of beautiful things have come from here. And so Sweet Tea and Cookies is a fun study that reclaims some of those beautiful things for our children, not instead of hard history, but to say it balances it in a more authentic way. So it doesn't talk much about the hard stuff. It talks about the food from the South, and it has recipes, and every state has a sweet tea recipe and a cookie recipe, but also that like country Southern food that you would get if you went to a Southern Baptist church and the old ladies fixed lunch for you afterwards. Those recipes are in there for the kids to learn about. And poetry from these states, and music from these states, stories that are based in these states, handicrafts that are related to each state, beautiful handicrafts, right? And yeah, it was just a something for my kids to do. We did it for a whole summer. That was our summer study. Some people use it as like morning time throughout the school year. And again, it was so fun. It was just so fun to see them come alive and to feel proud of home.
I'm so excited about it. We're going to use it for our morning time that I have rescheduled into afternoon time. And I was showing my son just today, I was showing him and telling him that this is how we're going to do afternoon time. And I said, there's poetry and there's music and there's handicrafts. And he goes, crafts. And then I said, and recipes. And he said, recipes. He got
Yes.
so excited because it's really the full picture. It's all the different ways to learn all in the one curriculum. And so it's, no matter what thing gets your kid most excited, it's in there.
Yeah.
There's
And it was
something for each
also,
state.
with it has literature in it, read alouds. And I tried with the stories even to show how interrelated we all are. And so somebody was looking at it, they were like, there's a book about Elvis in here?" And I was like, "Absolutely." Because 1, our kids don't know who he is, but 2, because he said his sound came from the Southern gospel church,
Yeah.
gospel music in the church. And I'm like Southern culture, what we think of as Southern culture, no one person can claim, no one group can claim.
Mm.
It's the amalgamation of a lot of groups and people's contributions, and it's so unique. So much so people have asked me, "Oh my gosh, we love this study so much. Can you do one for other regions of the United States?" And I tried, and I couldn't do it. I was like,
Wow.
"I'm sorry." I'm like, there is no other region that has the depth and unique richness of the American South. I'm not able to do it.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm also a little thrown by how old I feel that you just said our kids don't know who Elvis is.
I know. I mean, it's crazy. I have this other, curriculum, and it's called Joyful Generations. It's like an elementary school, like, Black history curriculum, and one of the people that we cover very briefly is Oprah, and someone asked me about that. They were like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Because doggone it, I said something about Oprah one day, and my kids were like, 'Who's that?'" I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, "Do not tell people you don't know who Oprah is. What's wrong with you?" And, I'm just like, "But how would they know? We don't have the O network or whatever it is," like, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, they don't know who Oprah is." So I found this picture book about her childhood, and I put that in there, so
I love
That's
it.
awesome.
That is so amazing. But also, yes, it does make me feel very dated. Very concerned. So, how did you land on the speaking circuit? Was this in the midst of the books? How did you end up kind of putting together these breakout sessions, master classes, whatever you want to call them?
Quite honestly, I am gonna give credit where credit is due and say that Ainsley Armit,
Mhm.
who runs the Wild and Free, during that time I told you, at COVID, George Floyd, all that, if you recall, there was a lot of talk about, like, sharing the mic
Mm.
and giving other people a seat at the table and all of that, and she never said that to me specifically, but I think that's what she did, and so I was invited to come and speak at a Wild and Free conference. I wasn't, like, one of the, like, popular kids or whatever, but, I did have a message to share, and that one day kind of launched
Wow.
entire, platform for me. And it really goes to show the power that we have as women to pull other women into what we're doing and what we're working on. And also, we can all talk the talk. We should do this, we should do that. And all these people fighting online and on the media or whatever. But then there are people who are not loud, but are
Mm.
doing the work. She's like,
Mm.
yeah, yeah, blah, blah. I'm going to actually have her come here and talk to my audience or whatever. And, they're kind of putting their money where their mouth is or whatever. And so she did that for me. That's honestly the truth of how I got started.
It's incredible. And you're definitely one of the popular kids now
Mhm.
Isn't
there.
that funny how that happens? I'm like very humble one because I'm like, people are like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "Girl," I'm like, "Mm-mm." I'm like, because I was like, I was just right there with you. And the most funny part is that people will be like, "Oh my gosh, there's so and so." And I'm like, "Where? Because I wanna see her too," you know? I'm like, I was like, "I'm like, come on, let's go say hi," or whatever. So I walk this, like, fine middle line of being someone that people want to meet and talk to, while I'm also wanting to meet and talk to the people that on the speaking circuit with, or that I'm, writing with or whatever. And, it's been really fun. I'm in a stage of life where I can't fully extend myself and explore all the avenues. Like, I actually have to turn down most speaking engagement requests that I get. And it's really hard to do because I like doing that, and I think it's a way for me to share. But as I tell them when I say no, that you want me to come and speak about my life as a mom and a homeschooling mother and an intentional parent, and speak from my true experiences. But if I'm always on the road
Mm.
speaking to everyone else, then I'm actually not home doing those things with my children. So I only prefer to speak from my own experiences, and therefore I have to have that experience. And so my core, I do write books and I do speak, but most of the time I'm just home in my yoga pants and a big t-shirt, homeschooling my kids, or out back doing the slingshot with my son, or taking my daughter shopping for clothes. That's really my life.
And can you talk just a little bit, because I love hearing this, about how nature has become a part of
Mm.
your life at home in the yoga pants?
Mhm. Yeah, so, the funny thing is, that was the one part of the Charlotte Mason's ideas that I was like, "Oh, God, I don't really know." I was like, in my mind, I'm like, "This white British lady's like, oh, be outside all the time." I was like, I was raised in the air conditioning, we don't do that." So, I was like, I had to that took some convincing, right? I had to read it from other authors, and I was literally looking for someone that I respected to tell me that that wasn't needed or necessary. So I was reading different books, more modern books, and I found that all these educational philosophers, if you want to call them that, they tend to start to disagree about how to educate older children or what's best for them. But shockingly, they all agree that early childhood outside as
Mm.
much as possible. And so I just couldn't get away from it. I was like, this just because it's uncomfortable for me or that I don't enjoy it doesn't change the fact that it's really good for my kids. And how much am I willing to, experience discomfort in myself to give my kids the very best? And you guys know the answer to that. You're a mom, you're willing to do anything.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, let's go outside. And so I took the kids, I packed them up, they're all little. At this point it's a 6-year old, a 4-year old, a 2-year old, and a baby in the ergo. And I like went out there and I'm like, okay, we're in here. What do we do? And then the kids started kind of doing their own thing, and we would go again, and we would go with friends, and you know, and then I just was like, I think I like it. And that's just the part about it is. I realized I missed out, on a whole life, a childhood and early adulthood where I could have been doing something that I really like now. And I just never knew. It was unfamiliar to me. And so now I can tell people, the woods is my favorite place to be.
It's such a good story because it just speaks to how motherhood can grow us.
Yeah. Yeah. And that we're willing to try more things for our kids than
Yeah.
we may be willing to do for ourselves
Yes.
because of just, I think that is a gift God gave us, right? Like to just have this burning desire to see offer them the best of us. And then that it's interesting because we'll do more to offer them the best of us than what we're even willing to give ourselves, right? And so I think that in some ways, so many ways we sacrifice for our children, but we can't ever lose sight of the fact that they give to us
Mm,
as well.
that's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I resonate with what you've said so much because I tell people, I even put it in my bio, I am not outdoorsy, I am outsidey. I
Yeah.
want to go outside in my backyard.
Yeah.
But we moved from Marietta, which was very populous, there was lots to do, to this very rural area, and I just started looking for things to do. I did not know what Wild and Free was. I had never heard of it, but when I Facebooked homeschool groups near me, I like somehow ended up on the Wild and Free site and found this group that Kat leads. And again, having no idea what I was getting myself into, I was like, yes, we will go and we will do this. And so we made friends. And then next thing you know, Kat has me hiking every other week, going to nature centers where they're pulling snakes out of bags and all kinds of crazy things. But it is stuff I would never do on my own. And so, my kids have brought that out in me because I was willing to say, I'm okay being out of my comfort zone to do this thing for them.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool because it also shows how much change can happen in one generation. So I think about my kids, their narrative is they've always been outside. They've grown up outside. And we camp and hike and we go whitewater rafting and kayaking and all the things, and that's normal to them. They all ski. And so their narrative of who belongs outside and their level of comfort with the outdoors and with loving God's creation and knowing it so well, it all changed in one generation. That's really remarkable. And I think it's really hopeful. I hope that gives hope to other parents, maybe not just with nature, but with anything that you want to do differently in your family. You can change that and turn it around in one generation.
So that hope is a really good segue into the question that we love to ask as we wrap up episodes. Amber, can you share a homeschooling win with us?
I will say this is a seasonal win. I feel like I was really terrified to be the mom of teens because I loved young childhood and we're so close and we have this really great attachment and we're loving life and I was like, oh, teenagers are rebellious and they're gonna have a bad attitude and they're gonna be and it has not been that way. It has been so fun and so lovely. And just like my girls, I can see how when people say my child is my best friend, my young adult child is my best friend, I'm like, yes, that's going to be me saying that because I'm enjoying it so much. So specifically, my biggest recent win is my oldest daughter wanted to go to a concert and Benson Boone, if you've heard of this singer, I
Mhm.
was like, "Okay, great, the guy who never has his shirt on." I talked to my husband about it, he's like, "Okay." He's like, "But not alone, like, not just her and her friends." I was like, "Surely not." So he was like, "You could take them." I was like, "Yeah, it's exactly what I wanna do." And, so I got tickets and it was really hard. We're, like, on there refreshing, adrenaline going, our hearts are racing, armpits sweating, and we got the tickets and invited her friends like we're going like in just a few weeks and to me like it's not directly related to homeschooling but it is because homeschooling I believe is what gave us this relationship where she wants to go with her mom because I would have rather been like killed and died than to go to a concert with my mom when I was 16. So I think that that is a win for me.
That's so
Absolutely.
awesome.
That is a win.
Well, we are just so grateful that you were willing to take the time to chat with us. You talked about, seeing the people and be like, oh, where are they? I want to see them too. You are that for us. We were so thrilled. And even this morning, we had a little wild and free gathering, and one of the girls actually mentioned you before she even knew this. And we kind of looked at each other and we were like, we're talking to her this afternoon. We're so excited, and we can't believe this is actually happening. So I just thank you from the bottom of our hearts. You are just so amazing. We love what you're doing for the homeschool community and just for the community, period, truly. So, if people want to find you and all the wonderful products that you've created, where can they find you on your website, social media?
My website is heritagemom.com, and all of my things are on there. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Heritage Mom.
And Kat, where can they find you?
You can find me at Recreating Camp. And how about you, Kayla?
You can find me at scratchmadesimple _ on Instagram and at scratchmadesimple on TikTok. And you can find us at Homeschooling Down South on all the socials. And if you have a program or if there's somebody you think we should talk to in the homeschool space, please email us at hello@homeschoolingdownsouth.com. And if you enjoyed today's episode, we would love for you to give us a 5-star rating and review wherever you're listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Until next time.
We'll see y'all next week.
You know that sweet song that opens our show? That's Sarah Ernst, the voice and heart behind Wild Pickle Press, where stories and songs grow wild and free. You might know her from the Little Forest song, or her books Where is Wild, Shout No, and Keeper of the Woods, or maybe from her poetry collection, Poetry for the Wild and Curious Ones. Sarah crafts melodies and tales that remind us how magical the world still is, full of bees and bravery, rainbows and rhythm. We are so proud to celebrate her work and honored to have her song Together as the backdrop for this podcast. Visit wildpicklepress.com and follow at Wild Pickle Press on Facebook and Instagram, where imagination takes root and wonder grows.